Dennis M. Walcott recently served as an honorary distinguished fellow at the University of the West Indies. Prior to that, Walcott served as Chancellor of the New York City Department of Education from 2011 through to 2013, following more than 8 years as Deputy Mayor for Education and Community Development. As Chancellor, Walcott led transformational change across a system of more than 1,800 schools with 1.1 million students, 136,000 employees, and a $24 billion budget. Building on Mayor Bloomberg's Children First reform, Chancellor Walcott prioritized cultivating teacher talent, expanding school choices, creating strong partnerships with parents, and preparing students to graduate from high school ready to succeed in college and careers. Over the course of Walcott's tenure as Deputy Mayor and Chancellor, the high school graduation rate soared to an all-time high. The dropout rate fell by half, and college and career readiness had more than doubled. What a great motivator. Please join us on stage. Join me in welcoming Dennis Walcott.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you. It is a pleasure to be here this afternoon, and to Hugh Riley, who I will talk about in a second, to the various ministers who are here, to the supporters, but most importantly, to all of the students. It's an honor to stand before you today. Now, Hugh mentioned something about we met a number of years ago, and I helped him. Quite frankly, we helped each other. And that's what today is about, how you help each other to succeed. And when I met Hugh was back in, I guess, the beginning of his tenure at the Caribbean Tourism Organization, and he was working very hard, and I was deputy mayor back then. And we just formed a bond, and that bond has continued over the years. And Hugh has been both helpful to me and my family, and hopefully I've been helpful to him. And I wanted to take a couple of minutes, because I know you're really here to present and not to hear from me, to talk a little bit about my background and why I was asked, I guess, to present, but most importantly, to talk about the bond and the connection with our students. And some of you may have seen me a little earlier going up to the various student groups who were here and talking to them, and I was just so impressed by the enthusiasm, the look in their eyes, people who really want our jobs right now, and they have the talent and the skill set to do that. But most importantly, the energy level of what they will bring both to their presentations, but also the energy level and the vision of what they will bring to their life overall. And I was talking to someone here, and we said, you know, we could not imagine being their age and having the type of vision, the energy, and the type of fortitude they have in developing their plans, but most importantly, the vision of what they want to do in the future. And that's what I want to touch on, because to me, the world is in your hands, respectively, students who are here. The vision of what life will represent will be as a result of what you bring to the table. And to me, we are just so impressed with everything that you have been able to do and everything that you will do as well. Now, I'm not a microphone guy, so I'm going to test something out for a couple of minutes, and if it doesn't work, just let me know, because I am not good on stage. With your presentations today, students, we want to hear exactly what your plans will be as far as your vision for life in the future and the type of energy you'll bring. Now, just to give you a quick background about me, I was born and raised in New York City. I went to New York City public schools. I also was able to go to college, and I went to college both in Connecticut, and also I got a master's from the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut and a master's from Fordham University as well. And I have a two-sided life. I have one side of my life that's social work, and the other side of my life that's education. And both of my masters are in social work and education. And I got those master's degrees roughly 7 years apart from each other. And what I decided to do when I graduated with my master's in education, I came back from Connecticut and I moved to basically where I lived, and I started as a kindergarten teacher. and I taught kindergarten for a couple of years. But then I did something that was risky. And so part of your jobs at life will be taking risks. And I quit my job. I went on unemployment, and I started an alternative Big Brother program because the school where I taught was in the hood, and unfortunately there were not a lot of fathers who were there with their children, and I was someone who was unique, not based on my intellect, based on my talent, but I was unique in that I was a black male teacher teaching kindergarten. And so a lot of the young boys gravitated to me, and I said, you know what? I'm going to start an alternative Big Brother program. So I started an alternative Big Brother program. I went on unemployment. I tried to develop the vision for that program, look for funding for that program, and then I started matching myself up to little brothers and recruiting men who also became big brothers to little brothers as well. And back then, this is way before any of you were born, most likely before anyone almost in this room was born that long ago, I did something that was a little bit different than the traditional Big Brother program, in that the traditional Big Brother program had a program for boys between the ages of 8 through 16, and I felt it was important to engage young men between the ages of 5 through 12. So I developed my program, and I called my program the Frederick Douglass Brother to Brother program. And I matched myself up to 2 little brothers, so I automatically broke my rules to start out with, in that I didn't have just 1 little brother, I had 2. And I also broke my rules in that one of the little brothers was 4 years old and not 5 years old, but then we developed a lifelong partnership with each other. And then what I also did is I went out and tried to raise money, so developing capital. I tried to get publicity, marketing your product, and I made sure I developed a team around me to support me in what I was trying to accomplish, so having a vision and having goals. But I made a mistake, and it's something for you to keep in mind. You know what the mistake was? I got too much publicity too soon. Back then, there was a program that was on called Soul Train. And so, how many of you remember Soul Train in this room? All right. And so Soul Train used to appear on a Saturday at 11 o'clock on Channel 5. And I approached, you nodding your head like, you remember that. Okay, I won't say how old you are then if you remember that. And I approached and I made a cold call to a gentleman named Earl Tolliver. And Earl Tolliver was the Director of Community Affairs at Channel 5. I said, Earl, you don't know me, but I'm developing this program for young men, and I'm trying to match up big brothers to little brothers, and would you be able to give me a PSA, a public service announcement, and ideally, would you be able to give me that public service announcement before Soul Train? Because in my mind, even though I wasn't trained for this, I said, that's the perfect place to have a PSA, because that's where your marketplace was. And so Earl agreed. He said, this man must be crazy, calling me cold and asking for this. And we worked it out where I developed a public service announcement recruiting big brothers for the Frederick Douglass Brother to Brother program, which aired every Saturday just before Soul Train. In addition to that, I saw a newspaper story in the local newspaper called the Daily News here in New York, and the newspaper story was done by a woman who was showing braids and how black women had braids, and this is back in the mid-70s. And I said, and she had a picture of herself with her braids and was talking about corn rolling. So I said, you know what, let me give her a call. So another cold call. And I gave her a cold call, and she said, sure, I'd love to do a story. They did a full-page story on my program with a picture of me and one of my little brothers and another big brother with his little brother in the Daily News, and was seen by millions of people. And why those 2 things were big mistakes, even though I accomplished my goal, I didn't have the infrastructure in place to handle the volume of calls that came in as a result of that. And I had volunteers working with me, I'm on unemployment, and I said, whoa, this is too much too soon. So as you develop your plans, and as you move forward in your careers, Always make sure, in addition to the intellect that you bring to the table and the vision and the energy and the creativity, that you have the staff and the people around to support that vision as well. Because otherwise you will do too much too soon, and the potential of imploding is very great. So, I navigated through that, worked hard, had great volunteers, formed a board of directors, developed a 501c3, but I really wasn't smart in how to raise money. And I didn't know what to do as far as fundraising is concerned. So again, great intentions, but very little capital. So make sure that you have the capital to support your infrastructure as you move forward, and take the appropriate bite-sized chunks so you're not doing too much too soon. So then something else happened in my life, and I'm going to fast forward because we really want to maximize your time, in that I met the woman who would eventually become my wife. So it's one thing to be single and unemployed, but it's another thing if you're getting married and to be unemployed. Those two things really don't go hand in hand, especially if you're trying to impress the woman's parents on top of that. So then a woman who worked for the school where I was taught, she said, "Dennis, I'm really impressed with you quitting the job, but if you ever need help, come back and talk to me." So I said, okay, I'm doing okay, but I'm about to get married and I'm looking for a job, so I have income coming in. What can you do to help me? She said, well, I can't hire you directly at my agency because even though you have a master's, we only hire people with masters in social work. But there's a program where you can go for work study, where you work full-time and then you go for your master's. And we're affiliated with that particular program. So first you're going to have to apply to Fordham and see if they accept you. If they accept you, then you apply here and then we'll potentially hire you. So I applied to Fordham, got accepted, and then was hired by this woman. And I say that in the context of you, the students, always make sure you do not burn your bridges. Always keep the connections of people that you meet as you go along your path in career in school. Because someday you may need to reach back to them to say, can you help me, or can you give me advice? Can you guide me as far as what to do? And never be too proud to think that you know everything, because you don't. Because to this day, I do not, and we do not know everything. So always ask questions. Always gather that information. Always then factor in the type of input you get to make those decisions that will allow you to succeed. And then as a result of talking to her, as a result of getting my master's, then I went back to school, graduated, got a job, stayed in my job for a couple of years, and then I was lucky. I was lucky in that I was able to do things that I wanted to do, because I'm very stubborn and determined as far as knowing what I want to do and also knowing what you don't want to do. But the other thing that I did, which I think is extremely important, is always be respectful. Just like when I went up to each of you, I didn't do that because I'm running for office or anything. I try to be respectful to people. I make sure I say hello to people. People are shocked sometimes on the street, and you could have the most hard rock individual who could be from the hood, and you say hello to that person, after they give you a shocked look, 9 times out of 10, that person will say hello back to you. So always remember, whether professionally or personally, always look that person in the eye and say hello. Don't be shy, but don't be aggressive either. Always sense of what that person is looking for and try to give that person your attention in responding to their needs. Because they will always remember you. So for example, I'm not going to pick, yes I am, I'm going to pick one student out, even though I met a number of you here and I remember what most of you said, but one young man stood out to me and basically talked about his future and what he wanted to do. And I will remember that. And then there was one young woman who said what she wanted to do as she moved forward in her career. Those lasting impressions stay with people that you meet, and they will always come back, as Hugh indicated, to make sure there's a mutual support society. Fast tracking towards now, and then as I wrap up, so I've had a variety of jobs, but every job that I have had has involved the community. Whether it was teaching, whether it was being a social worker, whether it was running a not-for-profit agency of foster care and adoption services, whether it was running an organization called the New York Urban League, whether it was being the deputy mayor, or whether it was being the chancellor of the New York City public school system, every job I have had has involved the community. And that has always been my interest. I have never deviated from that job. I have never, ever allowed money to dictate the type of job that I've taken. I've always followed my heart and soul as far as what I've wanted to do. And that's my final message to you. Follow your heart and soul in what you want to do. Because like me and like all the adults in this room, you will run against the odds at times. You will have tragedy that will take place in your life. You will have barriers put in front of you. You will have people say no to you, and that's fine. That's part of life. But the reality is, if you're following your heart and soul, then your vision will be achieved. Final message, and then I'll take questions, or I'll follow the guidelines of what people want me to do. Yeah, I was on a bus on my way to the subway to get here this morning, and I was sitting next to a couple people, and I was just listening to them complain. And they were complaining about this, and they were complaining about that, and they were complaining about this. And I understand that's part of life, but when you complain, complain at home. Don't complain in public. People don't want to hear complaints. I'm a solution-based person. How do you solve whatever is interfering in your life to make you complain? That's what life is about. It's meeting the challenges that are put in front of you, and how do you solve those challenges? How do you surmount the individual barriers that will put sometimes a damper as far as what you want to do? That's what life is. That's the enjoyment of life. I love life. So as you move forward, we're all going to complain about this or that, but try to be conscious of how you do it and where you do it, because people get turned off with negativity. They want to hear positive things. They want to hear a solution. They want to hear concrete results of your plan and how you will achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve, both from a business perspective, but also from a life perspective as well. So that's my long life in a very short period of time. But my bottom line message is, the world is yours. 10 years ago, the things that are invented now, people didn't even dream about, didn't even know what it is, didn't know what they talked about. You have the ability to be the leaders inventing things that we will never dream about 10 years moving forward. And to me, that's what you represent. You're smarter than us. You're more creative than us. You have more to disposal than we as adults had in our respective lives, and we expect greatness from you. So thank you very much, and I will follow your lead as far as what you would like to do next. Thank you.